Today, Unity has decided they don't want customers anymore. This is CheckPoint. Welcome to CheckPoint. I hope you're prepared for an unforgettable luncheon.
Really? Steamed hams? That meme's like 5 years old? 6?
No, it's back in TikTok form. Culture is cyclical.
Then when do we get to be cool again?
Well, there's unfortunately an important first step.
The Tunic soundtrack has been pulled from Spotify and Apple Music after a series of false DMCA claims, according to Terrence Lee, one of the game's composers. As reported by game developers Justin Carter, Lee was contacted by an unknown party on September 9th who claimed they were going to file DMCA claims against him in order to take down his music. According to Lee's frankly terrifying account, they simply just had to send an email to Apple Music with no proof. And then in a further statement to game developer, Lee added that his real issue is with the way that distributors and streaming services respond to DMCA claims and how their process enables harassment of legitimate artists. Their frustration is that there doesn't seem to be any basic checks or filters for even the most basic fraudulent attempts like this one. And it's something that we here at CheckPoint can sympathize greatly with, as every other month or so, some of our videos get demonetized because of a fraudulent DMCA claim that is always filed on behalf of a musician that doesn't exist against a song that they obviously don't have the rights to, but we do because we licensed it from the real artist by using a legitimate music licensing service. We appeal the claim every single time, win, and then repeat the process over again because, as we and Lee have discovered, the burden of proof for a DMCA claim isn't on the person making the claim, it's on the person defending the claim, and there are literally zero consequences for making false claims, but there are lots of incentives like stealing our ad revenue, or in cases like this, griefing musicians. Currently, Lee and co-composer Janice Kwan are working on getting the Tunic soundtrack back on streaming services. But until then, it's available on their Bandcamp page, where you should probably buy it anyhow because they're actually going to make money on Bandcamp sales.
Oh, we got a big one. It's time for ChonkPoint. Lose the trust of your customers and community in this one hilarious trick. Unity, the company that makes the game development engine Unity, didn't just put their foot in it. They sized it up, took a running leap at it, and released a blog post announcing that they'd stuck their foot so far in it that it was up to the knee. Whatever it is, I think it's supposed to be shit, and this is shit, but they're calling it the Unity runtime fee, and it's a charge to developers who use Unity based on how many times their game is installed. Currently, this plan goes into action on January 1st, but we'll have to see how Unity navigates the considerable backlash. And why is there backlash, exactly? Well, apart from being a sudden and startling change from how Unity's pricing model has worked so far, and not the one that any current Unity developers agreed to, it's now a potential liability for developers. Now, yes, you do have to hit an installation threshold before you get charged the runtime fee, but unlike a progressive income tax, once you hit that threshold, you're charged for all previous installs. And the fee itself is not retroactive, but that install number is retroactive. So once January 1st hits, if you're already over the threshold, expect an invoice. Free-to-play games now cost money on every install. Selling a game cheaply or on sale could see most of your revenue disappear in platform and now engine fees. And while the fee won't affect cloud installations like Game Pass, nor will it affect charity bundles, it's worth noting those two exemptions were added later, after some justified backlash. Initially, the fee also covered if someone bought a game, installed it, deleted it, and reinstalled it, but they've now decided they won't do that. But installations on a second device, like a Steam Deck, do count. Those are distinct installs and will be charged separately. It's so very painfully clear that Unity didn't talk to devs before rolling this out because, forget review bombing, bad actors could hypothetically install bomb a game, running up the dev's Unity bill. Although, in another recent clarification, Unity has said those won't count because they'll know when it's happening. So wait, here's an interesting question. How will Unity know how many installations have occurred? Because Steam isn't going to tell them. Sony isn't going to tell them. Those platforms make contracts with the developers or publishers, not with the engine makers. Unity doesn't get to know those things. Well, they vaguely said, quote, "We leverage our own proprietary data model and will provide estimates of the number of times the runtime is distributed for a given project." Which is literally corporate speak for, just trust me, bro. But don't worry, this doesn't fall afoul of user privacy laws because Unity doesn't receive any actual user data, meaning there's no way for them to differentiate between legal and pirated installs of a game. This is, pun intended, a developing story, as many smaller developers have been having a field day online, mercilessly roasting Unity for this terrible decision and the terrible way in which it was announced. So we'll have to wait and see how much more cyberbullying Unity's executive can withstand before they walk even more back, but I'm not holding my breath. And as a bonus, this is just ultimately a bad look, but a handful of Unity execs sold a bunch of shares in the week before the announcement. Now, to be clear, I'm not actually alleging that they wanted to sell off shares before tanking the stock price. I am mentioning that because individual people just put millions of dollars each into their pockets and then turned around and tried to implement a fee structure that would potentially bankrupt small developers, including, of course, Unity CEO John Riccitiello, a man we have now talked about for decades of this show. You remember former Electronic Arts CEO John Riccitiello? The man who once said developers who didn't prioritize monetization in their games were, actual quote, fucking idiots. If I sound angrier than usual, it's because this fucking idiot was asked to resign from EA for not increasing their profits enough, and for that failure, he was given 2 years of salary. Meanwhile, back in the real world, we have to comparison shop across 3 different grocery stores to buy food at reasonable prices.
Square Enix hasn't been having a great few years. And not just because in 2022 the company sold a bunch of studios and premium IP like Thief and Deus Ex for money to invest in the blockchain. Oops. But also not just because Final Fantasy XVI really probably hasn't made its money back yet on account of its tumultuous 7-year-long development cycle. And also not just because a lot of their big budget recent games like Marvel's Avengers, Forspoken, and the infamous Balan Wonderworld were all massive flops. It's because of all these things and so much more. To catch you up, this year, Square Enix has shed nearly $2 billion in share value, and their profits are down sharply, mainly due to the fact that many of Square Enix's recent games were either financial disappointments, outright bad, or both. And speaking of releasing bad games, over the past few years, the company's also developed a nasty habit of releasing half-assed microtransaction-riddled mobile games and then shutting them down after less than a year, which has burned both Square Enix's reputation and gamers' trust. But the real reason things are probably so bad right there is that Square Enix is really disorganized. According to a new report from Bloomberg, Square Enix's workplace culture is outright chaotic. And not in a, ha-ha, don't throw stones at glass houses loading ready run, you've already had to clean whipped cream out of your new office carpet on multiple occasions kind of chaotic, the demoralizing kind of chaotic. According to anonymous sources in that Bloomberg report, producers at Square Enix treat their games like fiefdoms, which leads to massively uneven quality between studios and releases. And, quote, there's a shortage of proper documentation and team structure, and there's ad hoc processes where project goals can shift without warning. The company's new CEO, Takashi Kiryu, has said he plans to thin Square Enix's roster and decrease the amount of outsourcing the company does to focus on higher quality, higher budget games to increase profitability, which is a very noble goal. But if things are even half as bad as the Bloomberg article says they are, Square Enix doesn't just need to make better games, they need to completely reorganize themselves or they won't be able to make better games.
Wait, is that why the main character in Stranger Paradise said he wanted to kill chaos so much? Was it like a cry for help from the developers?
Oh, geez, I hope not. Now I feel bad for laughing at that game.
Really?
No, it's still objectively very funny.
Oh, okay.
Coming up, rumor has it that the next Mass Effect game will not be open world, but will return instead to the series' classic format. One can only assume that execs made this decision after they saw the sales numbers for Baldur's Gate 3 with their special eyes. Square Enix. So, I mean, I'm not surprised.
No, this makes a lot of
Like,
sense.
I'm like, yeah, this, like, you have to restart a development process, like, on a major mainline game, and you can't salvage any of it. Like, and some of it's just because they wanted to upgrade the engine because it had been taking so long, but, like,
Yeah.
it seems like a really demoralizing place to work.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. If I was Square Enix, I would stop releasing stuff that wasn't, like, you know, that nobody was passionate about. But that's easy for me because I'm, according to John Riccatello at least, a fucking idiot.
Now, maybe Square Enix doesn't have to if they take the Ubisoft route and simply make a game that can't get certified for release.
Yes!
So X-Defiant, Ubisoft's upcoming multiplayer title, and like the only thing they've released so far this year, or I mean they haven't released it yet, and it's being delayed. It's been delayed a couple times for internal reasons, but now they finished it and they sent off the certification master to like Microsoft and Sony for certification, where the company this was a very transparent blog post from Ubisoft, which was weirdly nice to read, but the upshot was we sent our game to Microsoft and Sony and they did their QA and said, nah dog, this is bad, and sent it back.
Yikes.
And so X-Defiant is being delayed until they can fix the certification things, or if they can get it fixed enough that they can get a provisional certification based on Ubisoft agreeing to ship out a day one patch, which, as a person who plays video games, also sucks. I hate the day one patch. I hate.
Me too, but like I feel like that's at least more acceptable these days, that you get the game and then you install
more
a
acceptable,
patch.
but yeah.
Think about all the buggy Ubisoft and Bethesda games that did presumably make it through the certification process.
That's what.
How bad a game has to have been.
That's what blows my mind. Like Ubisoft games tend to be, you know, maybe they're not always great, and maybe they're lacking like features, but they don't have like the same level of like glitchy nonsense that
like Bethesda games,
older Bethesda
or
games
like
do, right?
I mean, there's a couple of Assassin's Creed games that would probably.
Oh, that one Assassin's Creed games where the guy's face falls off. That's true.
But
there was
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But still, the speaking of Bethesda, they are.
But that game made it through.
Yeah, exactly. That one made it through.
Yeah,
cert.
well, face falling off isn't a game-breaking bug. It's just kind of funny.
That's true.
I mean, if Pokemon Scarlet and Violet got certified, Penelope.
Yeah, that's the thing,
7.
is that like the QA that the certification does is not about that kind of thing,
It's
right?
just about, does the game run? Does it crash the system? Does it like use your resources effectively? Does it make your PlayStation overheat? Right? That's what they care
Yeah.
about. If someone's face falls off and the textures all drop out, that just makes your game look bad. It's not going to
Yeah.
harm the service
Yeah,
and your
Sony's like,
customers.
you want to release that? I guess you can. you
Yeah.
know. But speaking of Bethesda, Starfield is continuing to patch and whatnot. Starfield, they say they're going to be supporting this game for years, which is cool. They've added an eat button. So previously, because there's food items in the game, and previously the way
couldn't eat
that what you had to do was you pick them up, and then you go into your inventory, and then you select the food, and then you hot out eat the food. But now you can just hover over the food and go straight to eating, which I believe was technology that they invented back in BioShock.
I can eat food in Animal Crossing. So, as we know, that's the pinnacle of interactive gaming.
That's true. Also, tangentially related to Starfield, and I love this. What if you started playing Starfield, or you heard about Starfield, and then were like, this actually isn't the game that I thought it was. There's aspect, when you realize it's just any other Bethesda game in space.
Right.
Right. It's just Skyrim. It's just new Fallout.
I mean,
but
I
in
won't.
space, right?
Okay, well, that still appeals to me, but
I still wish to play
Yeah.
that. But what if you start playing that and you're like, oh, this is not actually what I thought it was going to be? But people keep talking about this No Man's Sky game. Sean Murray from Hello Games says that No Man's Sky has had their best month in years.
Oh, because people are like, this is not grognardy enough for me. I wanted a more hard space sim.
I wanted not just a hard space sim, but I wanted to be able to like fly from the planet up into space and then over to a different planet and just like zone out and mine ore and then fly around over here. Because that's not, you don't seamlessly go from planet to space in Starfield. There's like a loading thing and it's fast travel and stuff. And so I can see that a bunch of people will be like, oh man, this isn't actually what I thought it was going to be. But No Man's Sky has now had 7 years of improvements and additions and things, and it rocks.
Yeah, it's a really fun game.
Also, for anyone who's like, oh, 7 years, boy, I feel old. Paul pointed out the episode of The Simpsons that the steamed hams scene is from is 27 years old. Yeah.
Oh, the old gray hair.
Just ain't what she used to be. Anyway, so there's your...
Weeze is an elder millennial.
Yeah, there's your fun fact for the day. Thanks for watching Checkpoint, everybody.
Take your back pill.
Go like attack John Riccatello or something.
Yeah, fuck that man.
Politely on the internet, not like physically. I'm not advocating for actual...
Send an angry email.
I'm not...
But don't be mean to the people who, like,
For legal reasons, I'm not advocating violence against John Riccatello.
Yeah, and I would caution you that I would argue most of the people who work at Unity
hate this.
They probably got blindsided by this. They probably said this is a bad idea and people will hate it, and they were probably ignored. I'm sure all the people who develop at Unity. This is the C-suite almost certainly coming up with asinine ideas because they don't understand their business model. They just want to make even more money.
Yeah.
Leave that it's the top. The shit needs to roll uphill, not downhill. Do not make the people who work at Unity's life bad unless they are pulling, several $100,000 and
There's
have
only one way
offices.
to make the shit roll uphill. We're going to need a whole lot more shit.
Well, I was thinking some sort of like gravity hose or something.
Oh, that's okay. Fine. Fair enough. Gravity hose and shit.